Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of BACKCHAT. This time, we've brought in jcStani as our latest guest as well. You know him from Immortals as well. The longest-standing member, second to Gangster, I believe, now on the roster.
I think so.
So they're from the beginning, an OG member of Immortals. Thanks for coming on, Stani. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, we got a couple of questions we're going to go through, going through essentially like all the way back to the beginning. Starting with a pretty basic question, which was like the scouting process of Immortals and how you got found. So I said that you were one of the OG members of Immortals. This is way back when. I had to look up the date just a minute ago, and I've immediately forgotten. But it was May 21st is when the team was being formed.
That's a long time ago.
And I mean, in the lifespan of VALORANT Esports, that is a long time, but you were there right at the beginning. And what was that process like for you getting scouted on Immortals?
So, I mean, the process started obviously earlier. I think I got signed like a month before it was announced. But the process was probably pretty strange for most teams because it was a 10-man system. I mean, maybe it's similar to Overwatch, where they just got a bunch of, like, I think 80 people, and they brought 80 good players, various esports, CSGO, Overwatch, Apex, anything think of. And they just had them 10-men with each other for a week based, and then kept continuously removing people until there was only 10 left.
The Hunger Games.
And on the final day, it was just another 10 men. And from that final 10 men, like we played like 3 maps because there was only 3 maps in the game, I think. Only 3 players got signed. So it was quite strange. Like I didn't know if I was going to get signed. I was pretty confident because I'm like, who else are they going to sign but me? Yeah. At that time, I was playing Cypher. And I was pretty good at Cypher. So I didn't really know who was going to get signed. I had like hopes, like I actually hoped Brior would get signed because me and the 10-man, we had pretty good chemistry. So I was pretty glad that happened. But other than that, I didn't really know. Yeah. And the way I got in to this like closed 10-man group was weird in itself because initially, like the early tournaments, I played with battalion players. I don't know if you guys know them. Grego from Time In.
Yeah.
Lex, he Ultra Lex, he caps the tournament. BCJ from T1.
All right.
And Caboose from Envy was like the initial team I played in.
That is not a bad team.
That team would be good now.
Initially, Caboose wasn't on the team. We played with someone named Callie. He's on Team Liquid. I think he plays with Mendo sometimes. And then I think he had to leave and we brought in Caboose. So we won a few tournaments. You know, I was doing good. I remember I think I like posted a clip on Twitter, like a 1v3 I had versus Twyfo's team at the time. I think that probably helped for me.
Yeah.
And from there, I was actually able to get a tryout with T1 before I had the Immortals tryout.
Interesting.
And at that point, I didn't know if I was trying out for T1 Academy or the main team.
They didn't tell you?
I just didn't know because they both were existing at that point.
Yeah.
And actually Caboose was on T1 Academy. But the tryout process I had with T1 was also like a 10-man format where they had the T1 Academy players and the main roster, like some of them not announced, but Brax was there obviously. And we kind of just like played a 10-man together for 3 maps and like mixed up the teams. And I didn't get on. I think I played like really poorly. I was nervous. So I don't like threat. I'm not mad that I didn't get on T1. I wouldn't have picked up myself.
Sure. Yeah.
But that definitely...
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just going to ask, how did that kind of scouting process when you were moving into VALORANT differ from... I mean, I'm pretty ignorant of your previous competitive history, but maybe you can educate me and as well some of the viewers who are watching as well. How did that differ previously in your life when you were competing?
I mean, I never really tried to go pro in any other game, I would say. I played games competitively, but I never was like, I'm going to go pro in this game. It's just like, I enjoyed playing games competitively. And I never was scouted. I never had like aspirations, like, I'm going to go pro in this game. I played Overwatch.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, what changed from then to VALORANT then that made you want to compete?
Going to college.
Yeah.
Hated it. And I'm like, if I want to go pro, I gotta do it now.
Yeah.
I've heard that story before. It's like flashbacks of Jake at the house last year. And that was like the same thing for him. Plenty of people have been in that spot. So with these 10 minutes that were going on, were they being? I'm assuming they were being like spectated by Packington and Gunba at that point. Were they putting those on?
So it was Packington and Gumba, I didn't know at the time while I was playing them, but he created some like artificial intelligence to get all of the statistics.
Yeah.
Like,
dude,
Gumba's spoken to us
about
this
that, but it is just, if you haven't heard it before, it is just ridiculous, man.
So he got like obviously kills, deaths, assists, all that stuff from the kill feed, not from like the scoreboard.
Yep.
Like, and also like trade kills. Like, if I were to kill someone within like a few seconds of my teammate dying, how often was I trade killing? How often was I first blooding? And the API wasn't in place, so it was just all kill feed based.
Yeah.
So they, at the end, they showed me like statistics, and the way they really picked out players was Gangsta and Bior had the best stats out of all the participants, so they got. But I had like the 5th best stats, and the reason I was picked over like a few other people was apparently in one of the 10-mans, a player said something, and I just like hard disagreed with them and said the better option, and that showed signs of being like having like, I don't know, being an IGL pretty much. So that's kind of why I was chosen.
Interesting.
That is interesting to note.
I don't know.
Obviously, given that you became the in-game
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah, it is always mega interesting, especially with the blend of Valorant, where it's taken some people with Overwatch experience and some people with CS experience and blended them together. To give you an insight into how it works in Overwatch, generally speaking, it's very similar. There's a lot of AI being used. There's a lot of data gathering. And I'm not going to say that people are chosen specifically just based on stats, but people are heavily looking at stats to augment their opinions of what they're seeing in the server as well. And, you know, you might pick up a person because you love the way that they play, but you also might pick up a person because they're massively outperforming other people statistically, even if you can't quite see it in the server itself. And this, like, I think another part of the secret sauce that perhaps CS teams have never experimented with is the idea that it started with 80 people as well.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Packington and Gumber have told me with the Valiant, when they were making the Overwatch teams, they'll start with like 150 people sometimes and whittle it down until they've got the starting 6. And at that point, it's a numbers game. You're going to get some people who are good as long as you can pick the diamonds out of the rough. It's really interesting. It's a very... it's a very different system to how CS teams have been made in the past and how a lot of Valorant teams have been made as well.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the reasons that we were really up on Immortals early, was that we were satisfied with the coaching behind the scene. Like you guys had spoken so highly of what Packington and Gumba were able to do in Overwatch. And then immediately coming into Valorant and seeing, you know, a large amount of the teams kind of just being ex-CSGO friend group creates this team and they're playing together versus Immortals being like the one team early on that was actually just hard scouting.
Yeah. How did that feel like for you actually, ShahZaM, being a team of, I mean, relative no-names at the beginning of the scene? It was truly like 5 players that had been plucked out of seemingly nowhere, and every other team was being made out of people who had at least some level of storied history coming over from CS or from other games. And so you were competing in the CLG Blitz tournament way back when against like Subrosa and Waddell and these kind of guys who are storied veterans from the, at least maybe not like the absolute tier 1 of CS, but they were still competing very heavily in like Flashpoint, or what was the other one? Yeah, Flashpoint, right before they moved over into Valorant. What did that feel like for you guys?
So, I mean, it feels good to be an underdog in a sense, since you have no expectations. But from scrims, like we scrimmed like a month before we played in the tournament. And from scrims, in my opinion, we were the best. Even like beating TSM consistently. But in matches, we've never beat TSM.
Yeah.
So that was quite a weird thing. Like we were very confident. Obviously, like first match, you do have some nerves. Everyone does. It's impossible to get rid of. You get over it soon enough. But I would say like I was happy with the results initially because we were a very good team. but I knew we could be better. I knew from scrim results, obviously don't matter as much, but it definitely shows some sign like this is what you're capable of.
Yeah, for sure. So from that initial, the 80-player tryout system that they were running, so it just started with you three, and then from there, who was the one that decided to bring in Asuna?
I mean, first we got Kohler.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right? So we had me, Gangsta Bior, and then the first scrim we had, we were trying out 2 other players. I forgot who. We played Kohler. He was on Way Too French. And he just dropped 30 every game. And the next day we're like, why don't we try out Kohler? And then we just signed him.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that's how we got Kohler.
Makes sense.
He just owned us. And Asuna, that was a longer process. Initially, I played rank with Asuna. I knew him from CS. One of my friends was friends with him. And I just played rank with him. I thought he was good. I recommended him to try out. We tried him out on Breach because we thought we needed a Breach. That was in the sense where like, we need a Breach. Breach is like meta. We tried him out on Breach. Didn't go too well. Kind of like left him on the side. Tried it other people. Tried a lot of people on Breach. And then we finally came to the realization like trying people out on an agent that they're not comfortable on is just not smart. You try them out on their best agent, and then everyone can learn an agent if they're talented enough. And from that point, if you want to put them on another agent, you can. You just find the talented players. So then we brought Asuna back in on his talented agents. He performed. And then from that point, we picked him up.
That's interesting because I remember as well that you guys had Thief at some point playing Cypher.
Yeah.
Was that maybe even when you were on the bench for a very short amount of time?
I was on the bench, but Thief at that point played Cypher. That was actually his role.
Oh, was it? I can't
Yes.
even remember from back then.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Initially, Proto was playing Duelist. And then after that, they switched.
Right. What was the system? Oh, go on.
You're talking about why I was bench, right?
Yeah. I wanted to go into that a little bit as well because you got bench, you returned on Omen, and you just looked so much better afterwards.
That was quite strange for me too. I mean, when you're a player and you get benched, I mean, especially I'm an inexperienced player, I just assumed that I was just kicked. So I just started looking for a new team. And I feel like the main reason why I got benched was motivation, and I was just too static as an IGL, where I was playing Cypher. Like Cypher at the meta was just going A on Ascent, say. Like that's kind of the role of Cypher, where you would just go A, take A main control. And what happened was every time I was A main, since I didn't really have too much info, I would just always call to go A. Because I'm just in my own head. I'm like, all right, guys, come A. All right, guys, come A. So I became very static in that sense, where I'm not centralized with the team. I only see what I see. Maybe my teammates weren't good enough, communicating enough, like what they saw. But it was also pretty much just on me, not telling them to do that. So it became a cycle where we just became too static. And I definitely was having motivational issues at that time, where I was like not showing up to practice 100%. So that was another reason. And benching definitely helped that. When I got benched, I'm like, all right, I think I'm kicked. But obviously that wasn't the case after talking to Gumba after. I wasn't going to be kicked. They always like thought they're going to bring me back. But I actually joined another team, Prospects, with Josh RT and Dicey. And they already had a Cypher, Baby J. So I just filled in as Omen. And I just expanded my agent pool that way. I started streaming games of ranked on Omen, performing. And then Gumba and Packing saw me playing Omen. And they're like, wait, we can just bring you back on Omen and move closer to Cypher. And that's kind of how that started.
Right. And presumably that had advantages for you IGLing as well.
Yes, since I'm now playing Omen, I'm directing where smokes are happening. I'm centralized with like the team. Kind of how Omen plays usually. He's not usually lurking. He's kind of like with the team, setting up flashes, stuff like that.
So going back into that era in like sort of the early summer, sort of early Ignition series times, you guys were always hanging around the upper echelon, but you would always fall short, it seemed, when it came to like deep in tournaments. If you had to face Sentinels, if you had to face TSM, just one of the elite teams, that's where the struggles always came in. And to the extent that it seemed like you we're just playing worse against them at times. And what I was going to get at is, were there any issues at that point with the experience you feel? Like, I don't want to say choking, but like the nerves when you would get deep in tournaments.
Initially versus Sentinels, we actually beat them in one of the really early T1 tournaments, like the T150K.
Yeah.
But at that point, they were still new. They weren't
Right.
very they were inexperienced as a team, and they got good fast. But TSM, I don't even think we beat them today. I don't think we've actually beat them in a single match.
Really? That is interesting.
Yeah. And the only match where I ever saw we got close against TSM was the seeding match in the closed qualifier leading up their first strike. And I could tell both teams were trying. We were trying. That's when we were playing with Shanks. I don't know if it's really a mental block with TSM, but more a countering of playstyles. It's the fact that Wardell is just really good with the operator. And if you're a very loose team like us, you're just going to be countered by that more often than not. And every time we play TSM, Wardell's just owning us.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say Sentinels is definitely easier to play in that sense, where it's usually not popping off. It's usually Sinatra or Sick. And there's easier ways to counter them than, say, an Opper.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that I don't know if we want to get into it, but that does kind of lead into the current meta discussion that's going on in the scene, what with the ShahZaM talking on his stream mid-tournament about both your team and LG and playing a looser contact style. And is that taking over the meta was sort of the crux of the discussion, with you guys having such a good run with the new roster, and obviously LG stepping up quite a bit as well. I mean, how much of that, I guess, do you credit to that play style, and do you feel that accurately represents your team if you get put into that discussion of being like a contact team or like a looser, I guess, puggy style team? Though I hate using the word puggy, but do you think that that's an apt category for you guys, or do you feel differently?
I mean, it's definitely over exaggerated, 100%. Definitely on attack, we don't really play a contact playstyle. We're a very default heavy team. We're not really contacting places. We play for info. We get info here, we learn where they're weak, and we exploit that. If we have ults, then we'll make forced play, because we can with ults. But I would agree with LG. They do play a very contacty playstyle with the Proto and Thief, where they do kind of just walk up and just kill people. So I don't think he's necessarily wrong about them, but I kind of agree with him on defense, especially on Ascent, where he mentioned shot up, walking out of smoke, killing people.
Just right out of
every round.
I don't necessarily disagree. He does play like that on certain maps, especially Ascent. And he also talked about the off countering it. That is also true. But it's really only on Ascent where we play that really contacty playstyle. Every other map is not really like that, I would feel.
Is that the only map where ShahZaM is playing Reyna as well? I know he plays Phoenix when it comes to Bind. What other maps does he play Reyna on?
He plays Reyna on every map except Bind.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, my brain just hasn't processed that, I guess.
But on other maps except Bind, he's not playing walking out of mid smoke, playing Market, doing that type of playstyle.
Is that a conscious decision? Like we should kind of set the scene a little bit, because you're no longer the IGL for the team that shifted over to Nature. But just to touch on this for a moment, what is was there a conscious decision for ShahZaM to be the guy that's just walking out on mid on Ascent and doing this? Is this part of the information gathering process that was like, we believe this is actually the best way that we can gather info on these rounds?
It is just playing to our strengths. I mean, it is a conscious decision. ShahZaM is good at that, so we play into that.
Yeah.
It is good. It is definitely good. Walking out of smoke at really weird timings. ShahZaM has a really intuitive nature to find timings, and just killing someone and rolling out is a good thing to do, especially if they're not opping. So it is very conscious on Ascent. We don't really do it on other maps, but it is a definitely conscious effort on Ascent.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever feel like the amount of Reyna he plays is a drawback in terms of the information utility game?
Okay, I have disagreements with Gumba. on this all the time. I am in favor of the Phoenix technically. Not in today's meta, but say in 2 years' time, hypothetically, if the game state stays exactly the same agent, same patch, technically Phoenix is better. I don't really, Gumbo argues with me all the time. I don't know how you would argue for Reyna, because it just doesn't make sense. Phoenix on paper has a better kit. But right now, you can get away with a lot of things. And it does make sense to play Reyna right now.
So you think
especially with how teams are playing.
So you think that like in time, when the game is more refined, it'll just be easier to deal with Reyna at that point when people are more adjusted?
I mean, it depends on the maps that come out, but especially on Ascent, like you only can play so many spots.
Yeah, right.
I do think our playstyle will eventually need to adapt, like we always adapt, but you only can do so many things. Not necessarily on Icebox, like where there's just a million angles, but especially on the other maps, like you can find Arena, you can flush them out properly. It just has to be done well.
Yeah, that is definitely my feel. And I think especially when people get used to your style, people are going to be deliberately looking for him, hunting for him, trying to counter him, and it'll become less effective. It's interesting to me though that Gumba is the advocate. That Gumba's the Reyna simp.
It's Gumba plays to people's strengths, I would say.
Right.
100% shot up strength as Reyna. His best agent. Probably the best Reyna in NA.
Yeah.
So he's always been an advocate of playing for people's strengths. And that's not bad. I mean, I am that same way too, but I kind of lean to more like, this is optimal, this is logical, when you should do this. And we kind of fights that way.
Right. Yeah. Would you say that generally defines the coaching system of Immortals, trying to find a system for your team where every player is like maximized? Is that how you would describe Packing 10 and Gumba as helping you guys, is putting everybody in the best position possible to succeed?
I wouldn't say it's 100%. It's definitely for our duelists where we want Chop to succeed. We want Kehmicals to succeed. But you wouldn't say the same thing for Nature, because Nature was a Raze player.
Right.
He would succeed. He's probably very good at Raze. I could even make the argument he's better at Raze than Kehmicals. But he's IGLing. And it doesn't really make sense for him to be on Raze and then put Kehmicals on Cypher. It just doesn't work out. But it's the best for IGLing. So he's taking a hit that way, 100%.
Yeah.
Gang, he's really good Sova, not taking a hit there. And I enjoy Omen.
Right.
So we are playing to some people's strengths and others not. It isn't always 100% true that we're always playing to people's strengths.
I gotta ask, how did that come to be with Nature taking over the IGL spot? Because when I initially, when you see these moves, and I think back to the games that I watched from their previous team, Soar and First Strike, Nature was playing, he was on Reyna and he was on Raze, and he was fragging really hard. And he looked like a great player, and so did Kehmicals, and the other guys on that roster. It was just stacked with upcoming talent. But when you see those guys get picked up, my initial thought is not they're signing Nature to be the Sentinel in-game leader. That definitely caught me off guard. So what was the decision-making behind that?
So we knew we were going to get rid of players after First Strike. Something needed to change. I already expressed vocally for some time now I didn't want to IGL. I've been vocal about that with Packing and Gumba for a while now. It's something that I just had to do because it was necessary. It's not something I wanted to do. So initially we wanted to find an IGL. We tried to find an IGL. It didn't really work out with the options that we wanted, unfortunately. And then we realized Nature, we tried out Nature on his best role, Raze, right? That's how we usually try out people, what they like playing comfortably. And he was just owning. Insane talent on Raze. So super talented. We're like, we have to get Nature. We have to get Nature. But he's not a Jett opper. And we also needed a Jett opper because of JMO's inconsistent performances. I mean, I've known JMO for a while, I like him, but he was definitely inconsistent.
Yeah.
And that's not what you want in your like a star duelist. So we knew we needed an opper, which means that we had to get rid of 2 players because Nature is an insane talent that we need, but he's not an opper. But we also need an opper. And Kehmicals was the best option for an opper. So that's why Neptune had to go.
Right. Yeah, because that did surprise me at the time, because I thought that Neptune was performing really well. I liked him. He was a good site anchor. He seemed like he was really effective. But when you logically lay it out like that, and you can see it in the server, this is a much better iteration of Immortals, and I guess he just kind of got the short end of the stick.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate what happened to Neptune, but I'm sure he'll succeed. And same with JMO. But it just had to be this way. Nature was too good to give up, and Kehmicals was necessary. But initially when we signed Nature, we didn't expect him to be IGL. I thought I was still IGLing.
Right.
But Nature came into the team with a very high energy, probably the most energetic person that has ever been on Immortals ever. Because I'm a low energy person, Shot Up is low energy, Gangs is low energy, Asuna, everyone's just low energy. Maybe Dicey is also really high energy. Everyone is just low energy on our team, and Nature was different. So we kind of realized that Nature could IGL. And then from that point on, like after we scrimmed for like a week, he started IGLing. And then Gumba helped him with that, I helped him with that. And that's where we are today.
I want to dig into two separate aspects here. I want to definitely talk about why you didn't want to IGL, but I want to address that a little later. The thing I want to focus on is, we recently, when we were kind of walking through UB and Bench previously, we're talking about how you didn't particularly like IGLing from the Cypher role, and you thought that wasn't as good. You wanted to be somewhere more central with the rest of the team. But now you actually have an IGL that's playing in the Sentinel position. And Nature's playing a mixture of the Cypher and the Killjoy. So what's different there, and why does it work for him when it didn't for you?
It is, you can do it. FNS has done it since the start, where he's played center role. But it's easier to IGL on Omen. And I've even talked to Shinobi on this, where he agrees with me. It's definitely easier to do this. It takes less effort. It takes less communication from the whole team. It's a very easier play style. And that's why I did it, because I didn't want to IGL. Like, it required less energy almost, to a sense, where if you're just in a central position, you don't need everyone communicating. You don't need all these things. You can just direct it yourself. But as we became a better team, better comms, more thought out defaults, the Cypher role IGLing is just, it works too.
Right. Would you say that you guys are very active in funneling information to Nature then, for him to make the calls?
Yeah. I mean, we've set it up so it's pretty easy. So we have a very obvious default that we know. We're just playing for information on most maps. So once we get that information, everyone knows to feed it to the IGL, and then we make a decision. We've kind of got pretty good at that, I would say. I think we're one of the best teams at just getting information and exploiting people's weak sites.
I want to return to what I was talking about before then. Why do you not want to IGL? What is it about IGLing that you didn't enjoy?
Okay, I mean, it's a very selfish reason. It's just harder to IGL. That's really just it. It takes way more effort. It's way more stressful. It is just it's not a fun role. I mean, people that I do enjoy, like, giving ideas, but I don't enjoy being creative every single round.
Right.
Like, I'm a low energy person naturally. So for me to just like give that 110% every single round, every single scrim is very strenuous for me. Like, I just can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I imagine as well, did you find the transition periods difficult as an IGL when all these roster moves were happening? Because that's one of the things that has always kind of, I guess, plagued the actual team Immortals, is that there have been a number of roster moves so far.
Gumba and packing definitely help out with that. So when a new player joins the team, I'm not the only one like explaining what you need to do, how you need to do it. We have two coaches, so it's not just on me. So in that sense, it wasn't too hard. Like, I'm not just a sole IGL, a team leader. I have support, so that definitely made it easier. But it is very stressful having new players. Like, no one wants to have a new player. Like, that's not what you want. Even if you're like, I'm probably the most used to player having roster changes, it's still not fun.
Yeah.
Seeing, like, especially when Asuna and Dicey left, that probably hurt me the most, because I was very close with them, and seeing them leave, like, I didn't like want them to leave. That wasn't like something I wanted.
Yeah,
it just like
of course.
happened that way.
Yeah.
I mean, that was actually was something that I really wanted to ask about, was what was the feeling of the team after Asuna and Dicey left. I mean, you guys were improving. You had a stacked roster at that point. You only had Dicey for a pretty short amount of time, and he was looking like a mega talent. So what was the atmosphere after that? Was there, I don't know, hope for the future and like replacing them, or did it feel like just a monumental task?
I'm not gonna lie, it definitely felt like a monumental task, like losing Asuna, especially being the star talent he was. But like, there's a period, like a few week period, like, come on, like, gotta try new players. But honestly, we got incredibly lucky because right after we found ShahZaM, like, he is insane. Like, right when we found ShahZaM, everything was fine because we found someone as good or not better.
Yeah. There was that honeymoon period around the time that ShahZaM was introduced into the team where you were just dominant. I think it was one of the best looks that Immortals has had.
ShahZaM was killing everyone.
I mean, that Renegades tournament, it immediately was like, oh, well, they might have just found another Asuna right away.
Yeah. It was very lucky how we found them, but
that led into the first strike tournament, right, as well.
Yeah.
Straight afterwards. And that was a tournament where I don't think, I mean, from your perspective, you qualified for it, but going out in the first round of games in the first strike, it must have been quite a disappointing feeling. What was that like, that entire process and that period of time, I suppose, during first strike for you as a team? Because like what I was saying, I mean, you were in flux. Immortals was in flux for the longest time, just a rotation of players. And it felt like you guys never had time to really, with the exception of maybe the start of the inception of Immortals and the end of it now, currently where you guys are at now, it felt like you never really had time to settle and really develop with all the changes going on. But what was first strike like from your perspective?
First strike was weird because in the first open qualifier, we actually lost to XSET and didn't qualify.
Yeah.
And at that point, XSET is not what it is now today.
Yeah.
XSET now is really good, but then they didn't have BCJ, and to be honest, they weren't that good. It was definitely a very big upset. And from that point, we got really hungry after that. We just scrimmed 2 weeks nonstop, every day, just wanting it. But when we got in after we qualified in the next open, ShahZaM had an emergency. He couldn't play. Right. And I remember in the T1 match, I was actually playing really good. ShahZaM was like no calming with 7 kills. And we were about to win versus T1 on Haven. I think it was like 11-5. We were zoning. And then ShahZaM just left. And we actually had to win that map 4v5.
Yeah.
And then find
I remember that, actually.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. I've totally forgotten about that. That was insane.
They were farming ShahZaM in spawn for free ult at the end of rounds.
It was... I didn't know. Okay, at that point, only the coaches knew what happened to ShahZaM.
Right.
I didn't know. So ShahZaM just left. And I was actually playing really well that map. I don't know. And then I think JMO had a 1v2 clutch to close out the map, 13-11.
Yeah.
So that was quite insane. And then from that point, we had to find a sub in 10 minutes. And then, of course, Shank comes on mid-ball up to come and save the day. Unfortunately, we lost. But we actually shouldn't have lost because I remember on the bind match, it was a 3v2, 2v1 that we threw to lose the T1 series. And during that time after we lost the T1, then we played Dignitas, which is quite ironic.
Yeah.
With Shanks.
Yeah.
And I was actually playing really well during that period where ShahZaM was absent. And we were able to qualify without him. But leading into the Envy match, it was definitely bittersweet. Like, getting there was definitely a goal of ours. Like, since we had so many circumstances that seemed like we shouldn't have made it. But we were pretty, like, it was pretty hard for us to even win the match since Icebox was now in the game. Since Icebox was in the game, they already had like a month to practice it while we were still trying to qualify.
Yeah.
So that was like an advantage they had. And at that point, Envy was really, really good on split. Like, really good. So we knew we couldn't beat them on split. So we were almost forced to play Icebox.
Is this the legendary game where you guys went A 15 times?
To ask. You picked Icebox, didn't you?
Yes,
and
exactly.
I thought I was about to see some. I don't know. I thought I was going to see some unique strategy, some meta-defining gameplay. And there was so many A hits. So many A hits.
The reasoning behind it, I guess I could tell who we scrimmed, but we actually scrimmed. We had a week to practice the map. Yeah. We actually scrimmed like 100 thieves playing Icebox only, right? Yeah. And we went 10 or 12 times in a row, and it worked. It worked. It worked so well. We won the half 10 too. It was just perfect. We were just dominating, and we're like, maybe this is possible. Maybe we can do it against Envy. And I remember it was the funniest thing. I remember it was like we were losing like 5-2 first half. We call it tack pause, and we tell us like, all right, it's not working, guys. And then Gumba comes in. It's like, just go A more. It was just like, just full hit it, guys, full confidence.
Oh, God. But to kind of elaborate on that, that is because you guys had basically not scrimmed Icebox at all, but you knew you were going to lose on split. So it was like a tactical choice to roll the bones.
It was a necessary thing.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so, I mean, that kind of adds up.
The way that you're describing this, though, and you're triggering the memories of the Immortals run through First Strike in my head, there was a lot of mitigating factors, honestly. There's like, shut-ups emergency, you guys barely make it in, you guys make it in. The team must be feeling happy at that point that you even qualify. Then you're playing against Envy, and you kind of know that you're screwed in the map veto, and you could come out of Icebox and be very reasonably like, okay, if we had had more time to practice it, we probably would have done better. Maybe we could have won the series. But it sounded previously like you, as a team, knew you needed to make changes after First Strike. Like you weren't using those as excuses. You knew that there were roster changes that needed to be made, even though there could be considered reasonable mitigating circumstances for why you weren't able to go deeper.
Yes, because of I mean, we played with JMO for a long time already. Like, this wasn't new. I already didn't want to IGL. It wasn't like me saying like I'm incompetent. I called Icebox to go away. That wasn't like the reasoning. But it was mostly a JMO situation where we needed a consistent offer. We just needed that.
Right.
We needed an offer that was always on, always hitting shots. Like, that was just needed. So we kind of knew already ahead of time, like, we made it to First Strike, but we're not where we want to be. Especially with shot-ups and insane talent, like, we can be the best. It's possible. We just needed like an extra step to get there.
Right.
Yeah, that does make sense. That does add up. So then, I suppose going forward from that point on, when about was it now that you had signed on? I guess like behind the scenes, or been consistently practicing with Kehmicals and Nature.
Probably like 4 weeks from now.
Okay,
so I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. The team doesn't feel. I mean, it feels like a young team still.
Yeah.
It's a bit like who else am I thinking of here? It's a bit like kind of Exit, I suppose, with BCJ. Wasn't that like a month ago?
I mean, they got BCJ pretty recently.
Yeah. It feels like this crop of new tier 1 teams all made their changes around the winter break kind of period and have kind of surged forwards throughout 2021. I wanted to ask, do you think that this roster is the best version of Immortals that you've had? It seems kind of crazy considering you used to play with Asuna and Dicey, who are now on 100 Thieves. They won First Strike. Everyone knows how much of a talent, especially Asuna, is. But it kind of looks like this is the best Immortals have been.
Yeah. I think it's mainly because I'm not IGLing anymore. Like, that problem where I would be maybe too static in the way I called or stuff like that, that is a problem. And that has just been fixed now with Nature. So in sense, like, we have the talent. Maybe you can make cases like, no, as soon as performing better than shot up, like, it doesn't really matter. Everyone's talented now.
Right.
And we have the IGLing system that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So looking back now on this Challengers 1, which is the breakout performance for your new roster, I mean, I'm sure overall it doesn't really need to be asked. I assume your feelings on the matter are, satisfied for the most part with the run and not as satisfied with the finish against Sentinels. But what are your takeaways from that grand final? Like, what what went wrong? What needs to be changed if that rematch is to happen in the future?
Well, I think the one big takeaway is like confidence is key for us.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't confident in that match. Like, in order for us to win, we need to be confident. No one was confident. No one went positive. No one played well. But like strategic things, the reason we even played split was because in the seeding match we lost to Sentinels on Haven, and we're like not bad on Haven, but we also aren't good on split. So like we were kind of scared of their Haven since they played really well against us, and we were almost forced into play to split, and we were kind of like maybe overconfident, like, all right, we can get defense, we can maybe do this, but in actuality we just got owned, and that like just it's kind of a snowballing effect from there.
Right.
Everything else, like what happened on split was Sinatra was wide peeking our Opera B main on attack and just killing him.
Yeah. That was crazy, actually.
Yeah,
I saw that happen. It wasn't exactly caught on stream. And
it happened 3 times.
Really? Yeah.
Yes. Kehmicals died twice, and Gang even tried once, and he just got owned. No flash, no nothing. He just owned us.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the story of it.
It definitely felt like it. Watching it from my perspective, I think all of our perspectives watching it, it definitely felt like a different team from one day to the next with you guys.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting and kind of reassuring, I guess, that you know that it is the confidence issue. My question is, do you think that this is something? Well, I know it's something that can be rectified, but usually that comes with experience and time in those scenarios. Is that something that you would agree with me on? That you just need a bit more time as a team, more time in those scenarios and those grand finals appearances?
So it's that, and we did try to play into the read, so we knew what they were doing in B main. We tried something new, then we didn't practice at all. We were like, we're going to fight B main and kill them. We're going to flash in, we're going to try this. And that kind of leads to people being uncomfortable. Like, it's a very new thing. We're trying to go for B main. We've never done that before. So that led to some discomfort, maybe some confidence issues. But that really is like secondary. We're just not experienced.
Yeah. So going into the second map on Bind, is sort of the momentum that Sentinels had, is that a factor working against you coming into the second map? Because our sort of general take when we were watching, we thought that your Bind throughout the entirety of the tournament was your best map. It looked just superb. And we thought that was going to be, I mean, if there was a map where you were going to take it, we thought it was going to be Bind. Yeah, pretty much for sure.
It's Sentinel's permaban as well at the moment, it just seemed like it would be natural. I actually said when I was watching it live as well that you guys would probably be able to reset your mentality with a win on Bind. Like, you could go into the next map of Icebox feeling all right about yourselves because you could forget the booming that you got on Split. But it didn't actually end up playing out that way.
But it wasn't that bad. So we actually we didn't think we were good at Bind before this tournament, to be honest. In scrims, we weren't playing good on it. Our B side holds are bad. But then we figured out showers is key. You just need showers.
Mm-hmm.
So
we noticed that.
You just need showers. So in the Gen.G game, that was actually their map pick. We knew they wanted to take showers. We denied them showers. We 9-3'd them on CT side. LG, same way. We denied them showers, 9-3 side on CT side. But in the Sentinels game, we started on attack. So maybe that is also a factor where we're not getting the momentum on our good CT side. But we also 7-5'd attack. So we weren't boomed in that match at all. We got a 7-5 attack. It was really only after where we were on the defense side. Did we lose the pistol on defense?
I think you lost both pistols, but I might be wrong with that.
Okay. Well,
I remember.
It was more of like, it was just the Sinatra thing again. I think Kehmicals was opping hookah, and Sinatra wide swing and just killed him. And that kind of like compounded where our offer wasn't confident. They're just taking full on aim duel wide swings, and we're not winning them. We're such an aim duel heavy team anyways. Like, at that point, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Right.
You actually won the second pistol.
Right. Yeah. I was
okay,
mistaken.
so it's 7-7.
Yeah, so it was 7-7 at that point. Yeah, I noticed there was one round where Dapper just slow walked into hookah and beamed Kehmicals down when he was opping. And then he killed Shot Up straight afterwards. And I was like, That round, that like tiny little moment to me just indicated that Kehmicals was not comfortable on the day, because that seems like a shot that Kehmicals hits like 10 times out of 10 normally.
100%. I'm not sure if that was from the previous map split, but we definitely weren't hitting that day at all. None of us.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what you guys are capable of, because, I mean, you were so good across the rest of the tournament. What, if you don't believe that, or if you didn't, rather, believe that Bind was your best map, what did you come into this tournament expecting to do really well
on? Icebox and Ascent.
Right.
Those were what we thought were our best maps. But it didn't really turn out that way, since when we played LG, we beat them on Bind, and then we lost Ascent. So we don't really know anymore, to be honest. It's a very mixed feeling. Like, we think we're good on Icebox, but we also lost to Envy in the seeding match, and we got stomped by Sentinels 5-manning A. So we're definitely in a weird sense where we're like, we know we're good on most maps. I think Haven is the most unknown because we didn't play it this whole tournament.
Right.
So maybe it's still Bind if we're just on our game, I would say.
It's interesting to hear that as well from a player, because what it kind of alludes to as well is the massive difference between scrim and match results as well. It's like a lot of the teams use their scrim results to try and figure out what maps they're really good at, and then it might be completely different when it comes to the matches, because people have different approaches when they play the match. People have different levels of confidence. People reserve certain play styles to bring out in big matches. And it can definitely change things up in the tournament. I think that's part of why you see sometimes what appear to be very wonky map selections by teams, because you're not, as a viewer, you're not seeing all of the data that the team has access to.
And it's also the fact that this game is like rock, paper, scissors. Other teams counter other teams. And that's been from the start of the game, where you can have teams just owning other teams on the maps, and you would think, oh, this team is better than this team. I'm surely they'll win. And they just get like countered. And that's what I really felt in the Gen.G game. Like, we just hard countered their Bind. Hard countered. And that's why we won. But Sentinels, we're not really hard countering their Bind. They play it differently. They don't really focus on showers too much. And it's a different play style.
Yeah, that is what we were worried about on that Bind game, was them winning through the like classic Sentinels fast B, just heavy execute,
just flashing out a hookah.
Sinatra.
Although they changed Sick and Sinatra around, which I think was beneficial for them as well. I want to talk about the LG game as well, because you talk about rock, paper, scissors and different styles countering different styles. LG were giving Sentinels the business in the NSG final, and then they knocked them down from the upper bracket as well. And LG, it seemed like part of ShahZaM's rant on stream was due to his frustration against losing to LG repeatedly, who are just actually playing the contact style and walk it up, and Thief's doming them, and they're getting frustrated about their inability to gather information and deal with that effectively. But when you guys played against them in the upper bracket final, okay, it says 2-1 and it was a close game, but it seemed like a comprehensive outplaying on some of the maps. Like, the Bind was just destructive from you guys.
It's exactly what we're talking. We lost pistol, and it's still 9-3.
Yeah.
So they only won one gun round.
Yeah.
And it's because of showers. They tried to take showers, and they lost showers every single time. And once you have showers on defense, you force them to make executes that they are uncomfortable with, that aren't favorable. You stack. If you have showers and you rotate one to B, that's 3 stacked. If they want to go A, they have to go up short. You retake from showers. It's just like the most essential part of the map. And once you have it, a team is forced to make unfavorable executes in unfavorable situations.
Yeah. How did you guys deal with the LG style as well, though, on the other maps as well, when it comes to like actually playing against Thief and a Proto in particular, who are just gonna kind of walk up on you, and playing against a team that's very good at being able to trade each other out and have excellent fundamentals when it comes to that kind of side of the game too?
So the only map that I really felt like we struggled on was Ascent. And that was a really weird one, because when they were playing Ascent, they weren't doing their like contact walk up. It was more that they were going up cat on us and we weren't ready for it. I honestly feel like we played Ascent incredibly badly, and we should have known because we knew where they were going every time. We had 3 there, but we still lost. And I remember this situation where it was a key round where we knew they were going up cat, and we just weren't fighting together. Me and Gang and Chem were all there. They're just running up cat, no flash. Like, this was an easy round to win, and we weren't on the same page. And I think that just comes down to us playing poorly rather than them playing good. Because I don't feel like they were countering us. They were like we said, they had good fundamentals. They were running up together, but we had really bad fundamentals on that map. And on Icebox, that was also a strange one. I think we lost 8-4 on defense. And it's usually a defense-sided map. And I think they were doing the same Sentinels thing where they were just going A, right? And we honestly have a really big problem with that, where our A holds on defense are really bad. And that's something that we still need to figure out. Like, I don't have the answer to that. And it's just something that we need to overcome.
Yeah. When you're talking about like the teams having the rock paper scissors, the countering of one team versus another on a specific map. Aside from, I mean, I would imagine in your mind TSM would maybe be in that category where they're a team that just hard counters you. Are there any other teams right now that if you see them in your bracket, you're like, oh shit? Or is it just really TSM?
It's just really TSM and Sentinels. I mean, they counter us for different reasons. TSM, if Wardell is on, he is on. I guess the off nerf kind of helped that since he can't perform as he did in the past, but he's still always on. But Sentinels is different because it's not usually ShahZaM just going off, it's Sinatra. And if we can just shut down Sinatra with an op ourselves, I think we would have a lot more success against Sentinels, especially on that split. Like, I remember that shit vividly, where Sinatra was just peeking, like I said, the offer before. And if we just opt him once, that he doesn't get away with that anymore. He can't do it. Yeah. And that same thing where like ShahZaM said in his rant, where if we have an offer on attack, then we can kill the guy peeking mid. It's the same thing for most situations on any map. The pressure that the op has is so overpowering that it just doesn't even need to be there. Like, they are forced to clear out things even if the offer is not there, if he hasn't shown himself.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you something, because this is something that has now come to my mind as a topic that we wanted to maybe discuss on the show at some point. But I'll ask you. It's been several months now since the large change to the op that occurred, where generally it just became worse to op aggressively, and obviously the price increase as well from 4,500 to 5,000. After playing with and against the op in its current state for a while now, looking back on those changes, how do you feel about them?
Let's see. I personally enjoy it more because I don't like playing in ops. I'm not an opper, so in that sense, I like it.
Yeah.
But obviously, from like a competitive standpoint, I do think the lack of the op has encouraged our playstyle even more. I do think it should get buffed a bit, not to its old self, obviously, but it needs changes. I do agree with ShahZaM in the sense where bring it to like the change, add the cope sound, but then nerf Jett. Jett makes the op what it is, not like everyone else's other agents. You don't see Omens just going for these aggressive ops. It's Jetts. If they were to fix Jett dash, then I would think there'd be a decent balance with op in its old patch.
Yeah, I was always advocating for that rather than the operator nerf with like you have to be fully reset with your operator recoil before you can dash. So that you can't just take the shot and immediately dash away. You have to take the shot and like the gun goes up, poof, and now you can dash. And so there's a much larger window for you to be able to punish the Jetts that are holding these really aggressive angles. Because we saw like Mame trying to op with the Rays, trying to use the blast packs to escape, just doesn't work the same way. People trying to use like Yoru and Omen, they all have some way of getting out, but it's nowhere near as good as Jett.
Yoru seems kind of okay with it.
Well, actually, adding on to that, we do play op on bind on Rays, and I do also op myself. I think I did it in the XSET game and the LG game, where I bought an op and played showers and opted, which is pretty effective because if you're conditioning that you're not opping and then you bring an op there, you don't need a Jett dash away. They usually just walk into your crosshair.
Yeah.
And the op on bind is really powerful, but Jett on bind is not powerful. So you're really kind of forced to op on other agents because of like Raze utility is so essential. Phoenix is incredibly good. There's no really room for a Jett, but there's still room for an op.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. One other thing that I've been thinking about a lot recently with the meta that I'd like to get your opinion on is just breach in NA. Because we looked at the stats today from the Challenger 1 and compared it with EU and NA. And EU breach is at 43% playtime, and in NA it's at 12%, which is a big difference. And if you just go to other regions in the world and people want to talk about and post about Vision Strikers all day long on forums, they run a breach all the time. So how do you feel about breach right now in the meta? And given that breach had gotten buffed a few times, yet he's still one of the lowest played agents in NA.
I think it's because of playstyles in different regions. You're almost forced to play breach because all the other teams are playing breach. In a sense, they have this certain playstyle. Well, this is necessary to play like this. But in NA, it's different. I feel like if you're playing like a slow breach playstyle versus some of these NA Reyna comps, like you'll just get outsped. Like you'll just lose the engagements. You don't have as much fighting power. You'll just like get caught out with utility. The executes will get messed up. Like it's a weird playstyle, but everyone is now adapting the Reyna playstyle. You don't see any new NA teams trying to counter it with breach. It just won't work.
Yeah, that makes
interesting. I wanted to kind of tie that in as well into talking about, I guess, the tier 1 scene in North America as well. Because one of the reoccurring themes I think that we saw from the last tournament was this kind of rise of the new tier 1 teams in North America, at least from the outside perspective. We don't see the scrim data. We don't see that kind of stuff going on. We can only see the matches. And of that, it seems like xSet, yourselves, playing as Immortals, and who else am I forgetting? LG. LG is these teams that have come up now, and the one consistent factor is always, at least, the rock-solid fundamentals, always, across the board of all these teams, and this resurgence almost. What do you think the major component is of these teams now coming up and other teams kind of falling to the wayside in North America? What makes it such that this is the case? Do you think it's largely down to this kind of rise in, I mean, you said yourself you don't play the contact playstyle, but LG definitely do. But yeah, what's your opinion and what's your take on this?
It is definitely everyone in the scene has become more talented. Like the mechanical skill ceiling is continuously rising, so it almost rewards a Reyna playstyle. Like people don't miss as much, and when you don't miss as Reyna, you're just invulnerable.
Yeah. So
it's definitely increased that sense, and I feel like it's just new talent almost. Like older teams, say TSM, NV, you tend to become stagnant. Like I wouldn't say the same for NV. I know they practice so much, but I'm not sure about TSM. Like I don't know how they're working. And people were mad at TSM for losing to xSet, like it was an upset. But now we see it's not really an upset. Like xSet is just good now. Yeah, so I don't.
They are.
I don't know why people are now copying it. I just know why we do it, and we do it because we have shot up. I'm not sure why like other teams are doing it. It's not like some weird thing like Reyna is so good now. It's just like we've just always played Reyna, and now this meta is now favorable for our team.
Who do you think is in the tier 1? I mean, if you would, from your point of view as a player that plays against these teams in matches and gets a... It's different when you watch games because you can see that teams are good. But when you play against teams, you can feel that teams are good, right?
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's a little different. So which teams, in your opinion, feel like true tier 1 teams? Like if they came into a tournament, they're gonna make like semis or finals, and you're gonna have to be threatened that maybe they'd be able to knock you out or win a tournament, and they're the elite teams in North America.
xSet is definitely there. We actually almost lost to them in this closed in the early. Both maps went to overtime. LG is 100% there after dominance against Sentinels, because Sentinels is still very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Probably the best team in North America. So LG is there for their performance against Sentinels. I think we're there, obviously. And I'm really not sure about... I think 100 Thieves is there. I don't really know. I haven't played against them much in practice. But with Nitro back, they won first strike. You kind of have to put them there.
Right.
The only thing I'm not too sure about is TSM. Like, are they still good? I just don't know.
Right.
I really just don't know.
Yeah.
I think Ebony is still tier 1, but I just don't know about TSM.
It is hard to tell with TSM because they do just change what they're doing so often. They change their full comp so often. I mean, the constant is Wardell on Jett. And then aside from that, I mean, they're trying to keep drone on Phoenix as much as possible. But in terms of the other agent roles, it's just a constant swap.
It is. I think they're trying to always adapt so that they can stay relevant with the meta, though. Yeah. They're trying to almost stay ahead of the meta, if anything, which is necessarily sometimes you're going to miss, right? Like if you're always the team that's trying to innovate, sometimes you're going to go down the right track and sometimes you're going to get lost in the woods.
Yeah.
Because I think if they just play like a Reyna comp like us, they have the talent for it. Sabrosa is insane. There's no way Sabrosa wouldn't just be dropping 30s on Reyna. Like I think it could work for them too. They definitely have the talent to be one of the best teams still.
I'm going to be very interested to watch the next challenges. What are your predictions for the next challenges? Who do you think would make it? So there's the top 4 teams already, right? So Sentinels, Immortals, LG, BACKCHAT. Those are the teams that made it through. Envy narrowly missed out, Gen.G narrowly missed out, and then there was the teams that finished in 8th place, which was Anbox and NRG. Yeah. But of course, that's leaving out 100 Thieves and TSM from that discussion.
And God knows what's happening with T1.
Yeah, and the T1 are like, who the hell can tell?
I don't know what's happening.
So if you had to give your best prophetic predictions for challenges to the next 4 teams to make it, who would you have as the most likely?
I'm going to keep it safe for the first 2. I think 100 Thieves will make it. I'm pretty confident. TSM also. I know they have the talent to do it. They'll figure it out. But the other 2 is really hard because Envy has kind of like not shown what they were looking like before. Like I could easily say Envy if they didn't lose to BACKCHAT, 100%. So I do think Envy will still make it because those guys practice so much. They'll figure it out. Like I feel like Envy is probably the most hardworking team, other than us. Yes, right. Like they practice so much. And for the 4th, it could really be anyone. I would probably give it to NRG because of how good some of their players are. If they're on, they're just on. EU, Shanks, they're just really good players mechanically, but they're also really inconsistent. So if they're playing how they can play at their peaks, they'll definitely qualify.
That is an interesting last pick. I wouldn't have picked NRG based on what I saw in the last one, but that is interesting. Yeah. That is interesting. I mean, have you guys played NRG recently?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, right?
But we scrimmed against them and stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They strike me as a bit of a pop-off team. Like their players have to be on fire for them to be able to get the wins. I'm excited for it, man. It's got a good system in North America. It's gonna the best teams have the best shot at being able to make it through. And Nitro's back. 100 Thieves are going to be at full strength. It's just exciting to see so many good teams in NA funneled down to a top 4, especially when no one would have predicted this top 4 to actually be the ones that made it through from Challenges 1.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite unfortunate too. I honestly wish there was more teams that could make it because it feels like there's just so many good teams that are just going to be left out in this system that's held. Because what is it like for the Masters? There's only 8 teams.
Yeah,
that seems like too little for how much talent is in LA.
Yeah, it's going to be wild, but I think that's going to keep the teams all really hungry as well because there'll always be some good teams that miss out on it. You can't ever rest on your laurels.
Is it 2 weekends away? The Challenges 2. What are the dates?
1 weekend away.
Yeah, I think when this gets released, it'll be Wednesday, and then I think there's a weekend off, and then it's the weekend after that.
There you go, February the 11th, and that's really soon.
It is very soon.
Yeah, holy moly.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I think that pretty much summarizes our interview. Honestly, like we go through a lot of topics. yeah, thanks for coming on, Stani. It's been very insightful, as always. You know, I love getting these, any pro play, any sort of insight from the internals of teams. It's always nice as well, again. I mean, congratulations on your guys' performance as well recently, despite you guys not making it in the finals. I'm sure you guys are going to battle back for the future for Challengers 2. Utmost confidence in that. And yeah, again, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. Leave a comment if you want to see some other people. I like to say this every time. Just to spur up the engagements. You know, leave a comment. Who do you want us to get next?
Give me that
on the next episode of BACKCHAT. Literally anybody. We'll get anybody. We'll message anyone. They might not come on, but we'll message them. You know, we'll see. We'll see. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys soon for even more Plat Chat content.